everyone. Welcome back to the People Around Me podcast. I am your host, Tiana, and today we are going to be talking about the biracial identity, and that specific biracial identity being black and white, because we do know there are different types of biracial identities, but I think it's easier to talk about black and white right now because what sparked this idea was the show Mixed-ish coming out and Blackish being very similar. But not only that, I've just been seeing just a lot of conversation around representation of black people, whether it's by a black British person, whether it's by a black American person, like who is actually playing roles of black people and what does that mean? But also, let's address what it's like to be biracial and having to choose one identity and kind of the history of why we have such complex views about people who are biracial and what does that mean in our society. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And once we get into the life of being a YouTuber. Once we get into the podcast, I interview one of my friends. We went to American University together. She is still in school. I have graduated, and she is biracial. And I always wanted to talk to her about this because I remember her mentioning it before when we were on this retreat, and I always wanted to ask her more and follow up with her on that, and now I have a reason to. I feel like this podcast gives me a reason to follow back up with people and see how they're doing, and again, talk to the people around me. So we're going to get into that, but before we get into that, I am going to give you a hot take. Now, this hot take is something I thought about earlier today, but you know how we're always telling people, follow your dreams, whatever you believe in, go for it, blah, 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 or just work hard on what you believe in and inspire others to hopefully think like you or have similar values or whatever the case is. Make the world a better place. But that is, I feel like we need to stop preaching that, because at the end of the day, that's getting to the people who are ruining the world. So, for example, if there is, and I don't want to say blanketly conservatives or Republicans, because there are some people who can possibly be out there who are Republicans and conservatives who are not racist, sexist people who are trying to ruin the world. They're out there. So, but I'm saying, when you think about it, think about what we're trying to do for climate change, what we're trying to do for the prison industry, what we're trying to do for anti-poverty and whatnot. There are people who are making it really difficult to make change. And those people are waking up every day listening to the same motivational content, and that motivational content is going to have to be partisan, or it's going to have to take a side, because I'm not going to be listening to the same motivational content telling me that I could do whatever I put my mind to and change the world and make it a better place, because making the world a better place for what I think is not the same as what that problematic person thinks. Making the world a better place for some people is literally oh, I don't mind that the Amazon rainforest burned down. I can now use that land to make money. Or I don't care that, many people are still going to prison and being treated poorly. We can get free labor out of them. And they wake up every day and they don't mind doing that. Making the world a better place literally for the President of the United States is making sure that thousands of people cannot seek asylum in the United States because he thinks they are a part of gangs, and that they will cause more crime in the United States. So that's just not the case. And I just really don't like that rhetoric because it's not specific enough. So I feel like if we're going to be saying this motivational content, we're going to have to be really putting in what we really want people to do in it. So yeah, I'm tired of it. And it always leaves me perplexed, or it leaves me feeling uneasy when people, say encouraging words like that, because it just makes me think that someone who is making it harder for me to change the world is consuming that same content, and they're continuing to make it harder for me. But okay, well, me or people who think like me. Should I do a brief break? Yes, let's do a brief break and listen to an ad. So today's video is sponsored by arnoir.com, and arnoir.com is the host's website, me, Tiana, and on that website you can find clothes that I'm reselling that I've worn. I have a couple of things up there that I think some people might like, and I also have consultations. I just did a YouTube consultation this week and it was really, really good. So go on my consultation page and see all the things that you can learn from me, and then check out my blog posts, and just enjoy the website. I'm working on it every single day, so if you want to be one of those people who check on it every day to see something new, do it. It will always be a surprise there. But and yes, if you want to donate to this podcast, you can click the link in the show notes. If you have difficulty finding the show notes, maybe just go to my website and click the podcast tab, and there will be some generic links that you'll always see in my show notes. But yeah, in my show notes, it'll be a link for you to donate to this podcast. If you want to, you don't have to. But I'm getting more confident in what I'm putting out. And okay, whatever. This is a long ad. But I'm going to be getting a mic this week because I usually use my phone and my voice notes. But I'm going to, not this week, for Black Friday, I am going to get a mic. And I know we're supposed to be boycotting during Black Friday, but I'm not going to be getting random stuff. I'm actually going to be getting things to help me take over the world. So that may count, right? I'm not getting fashion that's going to produce fashion waste. But anyway, so my ad is just, I have outlets and whatnot, and I guess consume wisely, even from me. Okay, now let's get into the show. Okay, so before we get into our interview, I'm going to give some definitions. So the first is miscegenation, and miscegenation is the mixture of races. But when you hear about miscegenation, you often hear about it when it comes to miscegenation laws. And anti-miscegenation laws in the United States were laws passed by individual states to prohibit interracial marriage and interracial sex. Anti-miscegenation laws were a part of American law in some states since before the United States was even established. Most states had repealed their bans on interracial marriage by 1967, and it is now 2019. So it's been over 50 years since the interracial marriage ban was removed by the Supreme Court in Loving v. Virginia. So we've obviously come, I would say, a fairly long way. There are still people alive that can remember when this was illegal. But since then, a lot of people, and even before then, have been mixed raced, and they've been black and white. They've been biracial human beings. We have Creole people. We had lighter skinned people. And a lot of the time, mixed race children came out of sometimes rape or, I should have said a trigger warning, unconsensual sex. And also, it just came out of power dynamics. You might have had white people engaging in relations with their enslaved people that they had. And then you still have a power imbalance when people are not enslaved as well. And then you had people who just genuinely loved each other from different racial backgrounds and have been producing children. So I think that, again, all because you make something a law doesn't mean it's not going to happen. But I also think it's really important to define colorism as well, because of people being able to, because nowadays people aspire to have mixed race children, because usually they're lighter or they have looser texture hair, sometimes, not all the times. If anyone remembers, there was a Tyra Show episode where this girl was mixed, but she didn't really get the mixed hair she thought she was supposed to get, and she was pissed. So, colorism. Colorism is a practice of discrimination by which those with lighter skin are treated more favorably by those with darker skin. The practice is a product of racism in the United States and it upholds white standards of beauty and benefit white people in the institutions of oppression, like media, the medical world, etc. And the websites I'm reading all this stuff off of will be in the show notes as well. So then I'll just put in the definition of discrimination, and that is the mistreatment of an individual or group based on their social membership, regardless of their social power. Anyone can experience discrimination. Okay. So I think that it's really important to talk about colorism when we talk about mixed race people, because not all mixed race people are going to benefit from being mixed race. Some people are going to benefit off of being mixed race because they are more racially ambiguous, they're lighter, and whatnot. But I really wanted to use this episode to talk more about representation of Black people. Many times in the media, you see Black characters being played by biracial people. And now you may be saying, well, biracial people, especially mixed with Black and white, are Black. Well, my hot take is that they are just that, mixed. Now, that brings me to the one drop rule. Because for a while, and I think as a society, we're going to be moving away from calling just anybody with a percentage of Black ancestry Black. And I think that's okay. Because at first, we know how people like to shy away from their Blackness. But now we're coming into this place where, okay, people are mixed and they shouldn't have to choose one side. And again, I'm saying this as a person with 2 Black parents, so you might be thinking, Tiana, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, that's why I interviewed someone with a better perspective. But that's the thing. I feel like people will get up in arms if a biracial person is like, well, I'm mixed, or if they don't claim that they're Black, or just say that they're Black. If someone, like, for example, if Obama was walking around saying he was white, people would be like, you are psycho. But that's what it sounds like when you tell someone who is biracial to just choose one side. All because they look more like something doesn't necessarily mean they have to choose that. I think they should still be able to identify with a word that encompasses both of their parents or both of their identities. On Wikipedia, the one-drop rule is a social and legal principle of racial classification that was historically prominent in the United States in the 20th century. It asserted that any person with even one ancestor of sub-Saharan African ancestry, one drop of Black blood, is considered Black, Negro, or colored. The concept became codified into the law of some states in the early 20th century. It was associated with the principle of invisible Blackness that developed after the long history of racial interaction in the South, as well as the hardening of slavery as a racial caste. So, okay, let me finish. It is an example of hypodescent, the automatic assignment of children of a mixed union between different socioeconomic or ethnic groups to the group with lower status, regardless of promotion of ancestry in different groups. So basically what it's saying is that this one drop rule was used to put people below others. So whatever percent of Black blood you had, or even if you had a little bit, you can never be at the top of the racial caste system. So I think that's very important to note, and I don't think we should stick to that. It's so weird the way we internalize stuff like this, because you're like, okay, well, if you got a little bit of Black in you, you Black. And it's like, no, some people just don't have to be. Because especially how you appear to the world, if you're able to walk around this world as a white person and you have Black blood in you, you're not necessarily Black, because there's an undeniable Black experience that makes people Black. If you have darker skin, you can never be mistaken for anything other than not white. So I think that is important. I think that is important. The physicality, the phenotypes, how you look, just how you look. And it could be superficial, but at the same time, it gets very hard when we're enforcing something that wasn't really real. Race is a social construct. So since it's not real, and now we have to keep rationalizing it because it is a part of our reality, it gets difficult, and it's okay to jump over hula hoops, But I think it's good that we are starting to throw some things away. So yeah, I definitely think it's just good to call people mixed and not always just say someone's black because they have a little bit of black blood. Because now people get hyped because they have a little bit of black blood. And now you got people who don't even look black running around and doing questionable things. And providing questionable ancestry if they get caught for saying the N-word. But again, we'll get there. So that's what inspired me to do this video, I guess. It's just all of these things coming into one. I've had so many opinions on mixed race identities. I've had friends and I that could literally talk about this for hours, of people who, yeah, they might even have a black parent, but they don't look black at all. So I'm just like, I don't know if they should even identify as that. Because saying you're black as opposed to saying mixed is a very different thing. Okay. So anyway, that brings me to some examples. So now you have a Yara Shahidi. If you know me, I'm not really a fan of her just because she gets so much credit for things everyday black girls get in general. I don't understand how she doesn't really represent me. She definitely represents some people out there, but I think she's a very hardworking woman, but she gets an disproportionate amount of credit for doing things that other black women always do. But anyway, she plays a character she is biracial, and her character that she often plays is not a product of biracial parents. Her parents on the show are both black people, or one parent is black and the other might be biracial in the case of Blackish. But then you have shows. Again, you just have so many black actors, whether it's Amanda, Jesse Williams. I actually researched a bunch of celebrities who were biracial, and the list was way too long for me to even sit here and try to read you more. But again, you have a lot of characters, actors who will play people in TV shows and whatnot who are not black, who are mixed and are playing people who are just, with two black parents. So then that always confuses me of why they don't just put a black and white parent. Why are they going to have two black people play the parents? So yeah, I started to think about how that's unfair representation. So I think I just want to start and jump into my interview with my friend Isabella. And Isabella, again, she goes to my former university, American University, and right now she's the president of the NAACP. And before that, she's been very active on campus. And even if she wasn't, she would still be a great person. But I think she was a really great person to talk to this about because she's very self-aware. And I've had classes with her where, we were in the civil rights class together. And our professor, he was crazy. He's actually on my Instagram story. Not my Instagram story, my Instagram page. He's crazy. But I think I've always appreciated her point of view. And again, I like when there are people like that around me that I can just listen to sometimes. Sometimes you just want to have good people around you that you can listen to and you're not talking at. You're actually talking with them. Or you're just letting them talk and you're learning from them. So yeah, we met up after work and we went to a coffee shop / workplace. So you're going to hear some noise in the background. I don't know if I'm biased, but I don't really mind the noise in the background. I feel like it adds character. But I'm going to try to make sure the volume stays consistent, not too high, not too low. Because if it's too high, you might hear the noise in the background too much. But if it's too low, then you might not be able to turn the volume up to a really high volume, because I hate when I'm listening to podcasts and then I get in the shower and I'm trying to turn it up and the person didn't set their volume high enough. But okay, so come and join me and Isabella in a busy coffee shop talking about her biracial identity. So I sent you this long email with a bunch of questions, but I think this specific episode really came from the fact that I would have conversations with my friends who are biracial, like black and white, and my friends who do have two black parents, and it would just always be this kind of thing where if I'm talking to a biracial friend, they're telling me about the difficulties of being biracial. And it would always seem like, I don't know if they're talking to other biracial people about this, but I will always feel like, okay, so what am I really supposed to say other than listen, kind of? Because I don't really know what to say. And then my friends who have two black parents, they would say, okay, well, if someone is biracial, they're black, that their black identity, it should come first. And then this conversation would happen more when like Meghan Markle wanted to be considered mixed, and people were like, well, she's black, like why is she saying she's mixed? So it was like, I would
interesting to me.
Really?
I don't mean to interrupt you, but to me, I didn't know Meghan Markle until she became the princess or whatever.
Yeah,
I just thought she was white. So we'll get into this later, but that to me is really crazy that there are like black people, like 100% black people saying that she should be identifying just as black.
Yeah.
We'll chat more later.
So people would say that, and again, everyone has like sort of a different take. I don't know, I just feel like I would have these spectrums of weird conversations, and I was just like, you know what, so where is the group that is advocating for biracial people about what they're going through? So that has always been like my number one first thought every time I would hear like biracial stories.
Interesting. No, that's really interesting because I've never even thought of like the need for like biracial advocacy, because at the end of the day, at least I think specifically for black people, anything that impacts black people impacts mixed people that are black, you know? So I think that's like a really interesting concept, because it's like if we are advocating for anything, it would be like social like constructs, I guess. But even then, like I don't know. I think that's just so interesting.
Okay, because you always hear these things where it's like there are biracial people who are like, okay, I'm not black enough for the black people, but I'm not white enough for the white people. And you hear these stories and you're like, okay, I feel bad, but at the same time, what am I as a person with two black parents supposed to do about that? So I'm like, so who's figuring that out for you all? Who's making sure that people are not bullying you because you have to pick a side? So it always felt like, okay, which is kind of like, what am I supposed to do in that aspect? Because like when I was younger, I would be one of those people like, okay, you're black, like if you have a little bit of black in you, you black. But then as I got older, I'm just like, that's not the case, because how are you, okay, well, you're 24% black because your grandma, your great grandma's black, but like, it's been, your ancestry has been shortened as time has come, so like, you're not black anymore. So it's one of those things where you just kind of feel like, especially with the conversation about the N-word, who could say it? So it's people who are now like, especially like in Latinx communities, well, my grandfather was black, and I feel like I can say it, and I was raised around black people, but it's just like, well, no. And then you have biracial people, maybe like Meghan Markle, who might say the N-word, and you might look at them like, are you even black? Right. And then when they say yes because of, or show you a picture, or say yes because of my grandma, then you're like, oh, okay. But then how do you give someone okay once they show you proof? Like, that is just weird to me.
And that to me is like one of the biggest things, like I think like with mixed people, is I don't really particularly care about like whose parent is like what and like what percent you are. Like to me, I think it has to do more with like how you present like to the world. Because like at the end of the day, like I know someone who is mixed. I think her dad is white, mom is black maybe, but she honestly presents as like 100% black. Like she's not dark skinned, but it's like her skin is a lot darker than mine, and like her hair is a lot curlier than mine is, and her like features are more distinctively black. And so it's like I had literally no idea until she told me, and I almost didn't believe her. I was like, what the fuck? Like I know you're not white. And so it's just things like that where it's like, for example, in that case, like she moved to the world as like a 100% black woman, whereas like with me, like I recognize that like I'm half white, like my skin is paler, like my curls aren't as tight, and like my features aren't as distinct, and so therefore, like, I do have a lot more, like, privilege coming from that. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's why I feel like it matters, like, how you present, you know what I mean? Like, there are a lot of mixed people who also, like, 50%, like, Black, who also present very, just, like, white.
Again, I think Black people are trained to kind of notice the nuances in Black people.
That's true.
As opposed to white people who are, like, who don't even know if, like, someone is Nigerian from, like, a Black American, you know?
That's true.
So, but it's, like, I feel like it just gets into this weird game of, like, okay, like, who has a big nose? Okay, who has big lips? Okay, like, and it's just, like, all right. So we're doing a lot here. Right. Where do we draw the line? And I feel like the biggest thing too, this is not an episode on Latinx people, but I clearly can make one on it. I just really don't like ancestry results dictating people's Blackness. Exactly. I just feel like that is strange, especially when we don't know how accurate that is anyway.
Especially because you didn't know that you were moving through the world as a Black woman. That means that you just aren't a Black woman. If you aren't aware of being Black, then I'm so sorry. You're just not Black.
If people are clearly, like, one of their parents identifies as a Black person and another identifies as white, and they both, like, move through the world that way, is it okay to start considering people mixed instead of just having them say, I'm Black? Because even if, say, someone is more white passing and they just want to say they're white, it would just be better for them to say mixed, as opposed, like, even when you look at history and you look at, like, I wouldn't say during either slavery and colonization, there would be Black people, mulatto, and white, or maybe even Creole. So there were these names for people who did have Black and white ancestry.
See, I think, like, at least for me and at least the other mixed people I know, we typically identify as mixed, like, anyways. Like, I've only said, like, oh, like, as a Black woman in very particular cases where maybe I'm, like, in a room full of white people and it's just more relevant and I don't have to, like, go through the nuances of, like, I'm half white, half white. Like, it's just, like, it's a story. Like, it's a lot to explain sometimes. And so there's been a few cases where I'll just, like, remove the part about being white. But, like, most times, like, I'll say I'm mixed because I don't think, like, just identifying as Black does, like, my white privilege justice, you know, like, that just seems unfair to do that. But, like, the thing is that I also know too, like, there was a period in time, I feel like, where because being mixed was so fetishized, which it still is today, people would, like, roll their eyes if you were to say, like, oh, I'm mixed or I'm biracial, just because it's like, oh, like, we get it, like, you're mixed, you know what I mean? Kind of like Drake.
We
like,
can tell.
Exactly, like, we get it, like, shut up. So then it's just kind of like, well, damn, like, I don't want to just say that, but that's just literally, like,
what it is.
That's what it is. Like, I don't, like, I'm not trying to glorify my own identity. It's just, like, I don't know how to describe this to you.
Yeah, that's a very true point that I didn't think about. So I'm so glad Isabella brought this up, because I wasn't even going to think of like how the whole stigma of being mixed race, and I did, you know, define colorism at the beginning, but yeah, this just goes into more of just how, like, mixed people are looked at when they do look racially ambiguous, have lighter skin, curly hair, light eyes, or whatever. They are lusted after, whether they're a child or an adult, and people usually get in relationships to produce a child that is mixed. So I think that is a good thing to note, that if someone is walking around like, I'm mixed, there are some people going to roll their eyes. But I think that is something we have to address. We have to address the internalized racism, the self-hate, and just the colorism in general that comes out of having a child who is lighter, or being someone who is lighter, and, you know, has their Blackness is not in the package of dark skin and nappy hair. And I just want to be very clear. I want to be very clear that the trauma that dark-skinned people with nappy hair deal with from people who are lighter, and just white supremacy, white beauty standards, causes, of course, adverse reactions to people who are mixed and are lighter, are treated better. So I definitely don't want someone to think I'm like, oh, you know, the poor light skins. Like, no, Isabella is talking about the privilege as well. And yes, I think that is always, I hate when people talk about colorism and they talk about the pain and the hurt that dark skinned people project on their lighter counterparts as something that is the same as a lighter person or white people bullying people of darker skin. It's not the same. The hate and the bullying or just the upset is coming from different places, and you have to acknowledge that. When you really look at it, a lot of actors who are playing black people are usually, sometimes they're British, and they're like black and British, but then other times they're like mixed Americans, just playing people who have on the show two black parents, and sometimes two black parents who are darker than them. So it's just like, how does that even work? Like they didn't have you. Like even we know this is a TV show, but we also know they didn't have you.
No, I think that same thing. Even with like Blackish, like obviously like Tracee Ellis Ross, like she's pretty pale.
Yeah.
But like when I just think about like Diane. It's Diane or Diana? It's Diane. And like Jack, like the little kids like in this show, like they're pretty dark. And it's like, bro, Tracee is so pale, and then you have like Yara who's like also pale. Like I get that they're trying to diversify the cast, but it's not realistic. Make sense.
Even like I think what set the precedent? The Cosby Show. Because what was her name? Was it Diana? Freaking the girl who dropped out of college, Zoe Kravitz. Lisa Bonet, there we go. Her character, she did not come from Bill Cosby and the wife Patricia Rashad. Felicia Rashad, there we go. I was just not getting it. Like that, they don't make her
right.
And if the storyline was accurate, she would have been like adopted or something, or one of them had this child with someone else.
Exactly. No, it's kind of funny because also, like, I think it's just to make it more palatable for, like, white folks to also tune in. But I personally, like, never, like, to me, like, I get annoyed when I see, like, mixed representation because we just don't need it. Like, it's just not something, like, honestly, like, growing up, I didn't really care, like, what complexion the person was, like, if they actually looked like me or if they were darker. I just wanted to see, like, black girls, you know, and, like, so to me, it's just annoying. It's like, why wouldn't you just get like a darker skinned person who would satisfy everyone's needs? Like, you kill multiple birds with like one stone in that case.
But so I feel like people would argue, well, it's acting, and it's like if someone can act the part, it's fine. But when you really think about it, especially for white actors, yes, we've had some problematic casting where white actors are playing like just other races, but usually like people are playing something true to like their race. Or a fictional character that is not even a human. Yeah. So it's like when you get into like black representation, it's like you can go on and on about how just like biracial actors don't have biracial in their storyline. I think that's the main thing. And then now you have mixed-ish where it's like, well, we could have just had this from the beginning. You could have just made Blackish mixed-ish.
And it is. Like I haven't even watched mixed-ish, honestly. So I don't know what the storyline is. Do you feel like
mixed people asked for mixed-ish, or was that just Tracee, like...
At least I personally didn't ask for that shit. The thing is, like, also, too, like, I'll say, for my own identity, like, I had gone through, like, a small identity crisis freshman year in college because of all this stuff, but, like, I think, like, I ultimately just chose, like, I no longer, like, care about being white. And the only reason I'll acknowledge it is just to acknowledge that I have, like, privilege from that. But I think that there's a lot of mixed people that haven't done the same thing, which is not, like, good or bad. That's just their own choice. So for me, it's just, like, I'll always care more about my blackness than, like, for example, my womanhood. Like, that to me is more important than, like, me being a woman and, like, whatever oppression we may face as women. Whereas I think there's a lot of mixed people that are still like, oh, like, but I'm also white, like, don't forget about that, which is, like, fine, like, if that's how you feel, you know, but, like, to me, it just seemed more important to acknowledge, like, my blackness because of how many issues there are, like, in the black community, you know, that need to be addressed. Like, I feel like my time and energy is just being wasted if I'm, like, worrying about how I identify. And I could just pick a side and, like, I don't know, you know what I mean?
I think, so for example, this was the first time I've heard this, but at my last internship, there was this question about can white people or should white people or how are white people working on forming a positive white identity. And at first when I heard that, I was just like, or a positive racial identity. So I was just like, why do white people even need to claim their racial identity?
Yeah, that's weird.
So I just felt like that was weird. But I guess in a way it could help white people work through learning about how oppressive like white people have been, and being like, well, I'm white. Like, how do I not, I guess, hate myself and attach myself to other ethnic groups in order to feel like an ally? So I get it, but I don't know. I just feel like white people, in a way, because of how we talked about whiteness, are kind of raceless. So it's like now that you're saying, okay, well, no, let's bring it in and claim it and figure out what's a positive white identity.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I think it's kind of like, I don't know. It's just, to me, it just seems like work I can't imagine. Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Like, when it's, I don't know.
It seems kind of dangerous. Like that.
Like
seems
what,
like
Jeanette Rankin, like, I don't know, positive white male figures. Like, I can't really think of any that you're gonna put on your wall. Like, this is my positive white identity figure.
Yeah, I think that's really strange. I will say, like, for me, I think, like, in some ways, like, I'm kind of a unique case, not to, like, toot my own horn. But, like, my mom, like, she's from Germany, so she's not, like, American white by any means. And so, like, to me, like, my, like, white identity is bound in the fact that, like, I am half German and have German citizenship and can speak the language, and, like, all my family lives there. So it's, like, in that regard, like, that is a huge part of my identity and, like, how I was raised. But I just think it is really strange, like, when there are mixed people who it's just, like, your mother is from America and her family's been here for, like, centuries and probably facilitated slavery.
Yeah.
But, like, I just think that part's strange to, like, want to claim that and not want that to be erased. Not that we should forget about the history, but it's just, like, why are you having such an issue? You know? And
I also, even when we think of, like, Barack Obama, and we look at, like his dad is an African man, not a black American man. And his mom, I think, is a white American woman, I think, and raised him. So it's like, when we're looking at him as this black figure, what about him is really black?
Like American black. No part of it.
Okay, so then we went into this short discussion about how whether or not people who literally are not black Americans feel entitled to the possible reparations black Americans can get. For example, they very well may be a black person born in America, but their family and their lineage is actually in the Caribbean or in different places except for the United States. Not to say that their ancestry didn't, deal with slavery, but do you get your reparations from somewhere else? So do Jamaicans get their reparations from the British as opposed to the people in the United States? And we also talked about many times how people who are children of immigrants, post-slavery, and I would say even post-civil rights movements, usually do better in education or just better in making a living from themselves. So in a lot of very prestigious universities, many of the black students are actually African immigrants, Caribbean immigrants, or African American and Caribbean American, meaning not black American descendant of slavery. So when you look into that, I definitely tell you to Google it. I'll do an episode about it, but it's very interesting. And I think it's something worthwhile to really note and really think about. All because you are a black person and you are an American citizen, does that mean you're entitled to reparations if we are doing reparations based on you being a descendant of Americans, enslaved people? So it's very interesting and thought-provoking to think about. And you have biracial people like Isabella, who her dad is from the South. He is a descendant of slavery. His family is. Her mom is not. Her mom is a white German woman. But in that case, she still is entitled to reparations more than someone who is like a Jamaican American, like, I guess, my mother. So it's really interesting to think about. And there is no right or wrong answer for that right now. But yeah, keep that in mind. Even when you look at the statistics, I think when you read different statistics, it shows how a lot of black people who are succeeding, graduate college, get to college, are black people, are like African Americans,
Exactly.
Caribbean Americans, not black Americans. Black Americans are still very much suffering and uneducated.
Exactly.
So when you look at that, and like that even makes me think, like, because my dad, he's a black American, and my mom, they are Jamaican American. So that even makes me think, I'm like, did I get to college in some pseudo way because of my Caribbean American ancestry? And because my dad, well, even if you look at my mom has her master's, not because she had like a track like mine, but my dad didn't finish college. And it's just like, even when you look at that stuff, it's just like, what is going on? Like,
And see, that's the thing too, that where did I learn about this? Someone was talking about how, like, even like black immigrants, even if they are coming from really poor countries, they usually have more money than black Americans do because they can afford to like immigrate.
Yeah.
Or
migrate? I think it's
Yeah.
immigrate.
Okay. You know what I mean? Just to move to America.
Yes. Oh my God, I can't believe we messed that up.
But yeah, because I just think it's interesting, and like I was talking with people once too about like black like economic mobility, and they were like, well, it's just really interesting because Africans are able to like build like this whole like wealth framework around like their businesses, and like, oh, like Nigerian food, Jamaican food, like come to this restaurant, like this African branding salon, bloop bloop bloop. And I was like, a lot of that is because like black people, you can't just capitalize off of like come to this like regular like black salon.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not as like, you just can't capitalize off it the same way you can like being foreign, you know? And also like a lot of those people that can't come here and just start a business, like you have outside money to help you do that.
But
you know
even I always thought, like, it's interesting you mentioned the money part, because I always thought it was just like a discipline. I never really seen it as, okay, these people have more money or more assets or whatever. I just seen it as these people have just, I guess, I want to say less generational trauma in a way, but also just a different type of discipline. Like, for example, this woman, I was talking about the homelessness in LA in one of my YouTube videos, and then this woman commented, she was like, you know, I'm Nigerian, I've lived in LA all my life, and if people are homeless, that's because they're lazy, they don't know what to do. And I was just like, what? Like, I was just taken aback, because I was like, there's so many things to tackle here that I don't even know how.
Right.
And then the fact that she was like, I'm Nigerian, you have to work hard for what you get, I started from the bottom too, and it was just like, okay, you're coming in with like a different perspective. Like, your family has not been in this country all their lives, whether you're black or white. So it was just really odd to me to hear her say that. And also in LA, there are so many, I want to say Mexican Americans, just Latinx Americans, period, that I just didn't expect to see. And it was just like, the homelessness was like different than DC. It was like just way more like in your face than you would think. And it just shocked me, because out of all the people we meet at AU who come from California, I've never interacted with someone who talked about it. Yeah. So it was just something that I was shocked to see. But then also when I talked about it, to get a pushback from a Nigerian woman who's like, you need to work hard for what you want, as if blaming people for their circumstances. And I was just like, wow. I feel like a lot of people probably blame like black Americans for not working hard enough. But I feel like that discipline comes from every other country and group than black Americans. I don't want to say we lack discipline, but I think it's just something else.
Yeah, there's been like a lot of tea talks too, like, you know, ASO does their tea talks, and I remember sitting in one about like black Americans versus like African immigrants, and this one girl said that she literally stood up and said this with her whole chest. She was just like, yeah, like, I think black Americans are just lazy, and like that's what my mama said, like that's what I believe, blah blah blah, like you guys just don't know how to work. And to me, it's just like, if you see like millions of people that look alike in the same predicament, how dumb do you have to be to believe that it's just like our own fault? Like, that's what white people want you to believe. And I, every time I hear that, it's so hurtful that I don't even know how to tackle it. Exactly.
It's just
because like, you're playing into the stereotypes. Like, go ahead and call yourself a cracker. Like, do it.
Exactly.
Like, you are white now.
Because the thing is, I feel like also it comes. some of what she's saying could also come from like adverse reactions with Black Americans. I understand that ever since Black Panther, Africans don't want us to forget Black Americans bullied them. I know. What do you want? What do you want? I'll say sorry. Let's move on. Now, what do we do? Now you're saying that we deserve to be homeless and poor and just be like shot by the police? Like, I don't get it. I'm just like, what? Like, it's very weird to me. It's very weird to me. And even when like in my school in the Bronx, like Black Americans and African Americans would like fight, like physical altercation. The Africans was always winning. Just gonna say that. They would win. Really? They would jump people. So I was like, okay, we were bullying you, but you won the fights. I know, and this is a predicament. And there were other ways, you know, people, of course, Africans would get bullied because of their skin color and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. So I know there's other layers to this. But it gets to the point where it's just like, what are you, don't say that. That's making you feel better.
Exactly.
Let's tackle the real issue.
No, exactly.
And then like this is the only time I'll be like, move on. Because it's like Black Panther came out, everyone went to go see it, and they're still pissed about stuff that happened in middle school and elementary, because I know that's not happening in like college.
Exactly. No, that's so true though. And I think too it has maybe something to say about like the damage to like someone's psyche when they're surrounded by people that don't look like them, that also like hate them and mistreat them, whereas like in Caribbean and African countries, those are your own people. Like you don't have that same feeling of like alienation, I think, that can like damage someone's psyche the same way it does in America. And like I'm thinking about too, like one of my friends studied abroad in Kenya last semester, and they would just like round people up like by the police and like detain them for no fucking reason, which is like you would expect that from white people here. But like for someone that looks like me to be driving a cop car and that just take me, bitch, I would be so mad if I experienced it or saw that. But it's like they don't think of it the same way, you know what I mean? It's just like that's how life is. Like
that's how life is.
It's not like a power dynamic that can like really damage you. Like sure, it's shitty, but it's like
exactly.
Those are just your skin folks.
Exactly. I really hope that as time goes on, I don't know who's really addressing it, where African immigrants can just reconcile like their childhood trauma with Black Americans, because no one's denying it.
Right.
But it's just one of those things that every now and then I see that tweet and I'm like, oh,
you're like, God, here we go again.
It's like I don't want to equate it to this, but it's like if you're in like a relationship and like the girlfriend brings up like when you cheated 3 years ago, and it's just like, I said sorry, we're back together, you know?
Exactly. No, that's a really good point.
Maybe that could be another episode, and I think of a way to maybe interview that girl. I don't know if I could. Unless she changed. But maybe every school year there is another person like that, because there was a person like that my year, and then one of my professors, she was playing like police brutality videos, so I was like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom, I'm not gonna watch this. And then at one point the girl who just would always say that she doesn't identify as Black, she identifies as African because of whatever,
she's Black.
So she walks into the bathroom and she's crying, and she's like, you know, I've never felt attached to like my Black identity until now. And I was just looking at her like,
yes, niggas getting shot for you to,
and you know that no police officer is gonna be like, oh no, she's Ethiopian,
she's different.
I was just
not like other girls,
exactly,
other Negroes.
Exactly. You look like me. So it's just like, it was one of those things where I was just like, if this is what it takes, just don't share it with me.
Right.
So then you have like you have biracial people who are putting forth their Black identity, and then you have African immigrants who are like, I'm African, I'm Nigerian, I'm Sudanese, I'm South African, I'm Ethiopian, I'm everything but what you all think is Black. Which is like, I don't understand, because the only reason why people can actually, African immigrants can even come to this country to do anything is because of the Civil Rights Movement. Like Black Americans literally putting their lives on the line to make this country a better place for Black people.
Exactly.
If we never did that, we would probably be going to South Africa instead of staying in the United States. So it's just one of those things where it's just a slap in the face when you're just like, Black Americans are lazy. I think we're lazy because we literally have our tired ancestors' spirits in us because they did all that work in the 1960s, and now we just want to do nothing.
Exactly. It is exhausting.
I guess, how do we continue to reconcile, I guess, complex people who have complex biracial identities, who maybe have been bullied, like, okay, in their childhood, and they still carry that, like, okay, kids used to bully me because, you know, of whatever. And how does that look going forward? Because there may be some mixed people who do resent how they were treated in the past and carry that to the future.
That's interesting. So, like, from my childhood, I did not grow up around black people. So it was just a bunch of white people. And I was just viewed as, like, the black girl of my school. So that's why it was interesting coming to D.C. and to college where there were black people. Because then suddenly, like, I was the half-white one. Whereas, like, that was never the narrative for the first 18 years of my life. So I was just kind of like, what the fuck are y'all talking about? Because I was just told for decades that wasn't the case. Yeah. And so, and I remember, too, like, people would attribute, like, if I had white friends, like, in college, like, I really have maybe, like, 1.5 white friends now. People would attribute, like, the white friends that I did have to, like, me being white. Like, oh, she has these friends because she's white. Yeah. Where it's just, like, or they just live on my floor and I'm a freshman and I miss my home. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, where it's, like, folks would say that, and I was just kind of, like, bet. Or, like, you know, like, black parties, like, for example, that's not something I ever experienced, like, growing up. Because the way, like, white people party, at least in Colorado, is you get drunk and then you sit around with your friends and you chat or, like, listen to music. Like, it's never anything, like, too intense. But, you know, like, black parties here in D.C., like, it's a lot going on. Like, it's a lot of dancing, like, niggas trying to talk to you, like, all this stuff. And I never experienced that, especially, like, growing up in high school, like, being black. There was no one that was interested in me, like, romantically, and so that really took, I think, a damage to my ego. But then coming to D.C., where it's just, like, because now I am half white and I am light-skinned, everyone wants to talk to me. So it's just, like, everything was so different, and I was so confused, and no one was explaining that shit to me, and instead it was, like, my black friends saying, like, oh, it's because you're white, like, kind of like a fuck you type thing. Instead of somebody, like, guiding me through, like, this is what's happening. Like, my dad had to do that. He's the black one out of my parents. My dad had to explain, like, all these different concepts, like, after, like, months of me being confused and, like, just upset, like, all the time. And so I think, like, that's kind of one of the biggest things is, like, and I don't know if, like, all mixed people, like, go through some type of identity crisis. But at least, like, when I did, I wish I would have had, like, a black friend who would have said, like, here's what's going on, you know what I mean? And just explained, like, maybe, like, here's why your friends are, like, resentful, or here's why they're saying X, Y, and Z. Because it took, like, several years for me to figure that out. Yeah. And now I understand. And, like, that's fine. Like, I completely understand, like, why you might be, like, angry at what I was doing. But I also, like, I just didn't know any better. I know I was explaining
But do you think, okay, but then again, do you think that you should have, there should be that guy, like, for example, if you go to a PWI and you're trying to figure out how to navigate a PWI as a black person, there are resources. Like, you know kind of where to go, even though it's going to be hard and you're trying to figure it out, you kind of know where to go. You kind of have articles to read to an extent. But I feel like, again, like, as a biracial person and how advocacy would work, just making sure black and white people know what's going on, there really isn't that education. For example, with the rise of people, I don't want to say the rise, but kind of like the awareness that people are non-binary. We have trainings. Hey, let's practice saying our pronouns when we go around in a circle to make sure that, you know, if someone does have a they, them pronoun, they don't feel awkward just randomly saying it. So that we have these things, I feel like, for the LGBT community to raise awareness around when people are in new spaces. But really, when there is nothing for biracial people to say, hey, in our society, we have biracial people, and this is how they may feel. So these are things to keep in mind. Like, we just don't have that. And I feel like there should be that.
I think that's valid. The only thing where I might even push back on that, like, I love your intent. I think it's very kind. The thing is that, like, I know that, like, with being mixed, like, we do get a lot of privilege in a lot of other circles. Where it's just, like, I know that, like, more men will probably look at me because I am mixed, or like I might be more palatable for white people to like talk to or listen to. Like I think there's a lot of privilege that we do have, and like we are represented. Like my like Barack Obama, that was me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it wasn't any other like black person. You know what I mean? So it's like I feel represented. Like aside from that.
So basically, what you're saying, do you feel like it's one of those things where, especially when like white people are like, oh my gosh, I'm so sad. Like people are being so mean to white people today, and it's kind of like get over it. So it's basically one of those things where it's basically like, okay, we understand you probably were bullied when you were younger, or maybe you go through some hardships here and there, but at the end of the day, it's something you can get over, basically.
It's fine. And I think, like, for me, like, it was really challenging, and it's, like, definitely, like, a huge, like, pivotal moment in my life, like, when I was going through all that stuff. But, like, I really grew from that, and I think
Character development.
Yeah, so I think it's, like, important. Like, I don't think we should be babied through that. I mean, like I said, like, maybe I wish that there was, like, one black friend that I had who would have said, like, here's why we're feeling this way, instead of just, like, talking shit about me. Like, that would have been cool. But, like, that's also just, like, friendship and, like, general character. Like, do better. But, yeah, I don't know. I think it's also difficult because, like, every mixed person has, like, a different story.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's, like, there's a huge difference between, like, mixed people whose mothers are black and whose fathers are black, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, my mother's white, and that has been wildly interesting.
But people usually say that because they, like, even with Meghan Markle, people were like, well, her mom's black, so that's why she's like this and that. And it's just like, I mean, there might be something to it. Like, I don't want to act like black women are the heavenly father of all righteousness, because they're not. Like, they're humans who are also flawed, who had to be good at nurturing. And then you know, black dads have like more of a turbulent kind of representation of sometimes they're not even there, or even if they are there, they, you know, people like to call them like the white women of like blackness. I don't know. So it's like, I don't know, I guess when you have those like very simplified tropes, then I could see how like having a black mom would be very different from having a black dad, or maybe the femininity versus the masculinity. I don't know.
And I think that's kind of the key part, because like as a woman, or like even a girl growing up, like you look to your mom more than I think you probably look to your father, even though like I am more of like a daddy's girl. I think there's still like times where it's just like you would look to your mom for like beauty or just like general things where it's like this is related to like my femininity, whereas like my mom was completely different. Like even just like her own like physical traits and like her hair and like all these different like attributes that she had. Is attributes the right word?
Yeah. Phenotypes.
Yeah.
That's like too scientific.
Yeah.
Features.
Features that she had where I was just like, I look nothing like her. Or even like if she would take me anywhere, because obviously I think mothers do like a lot of the heavy lifting. People would always be like, oh, like, is this your daughter? Like, is she adopted? Or like, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think that a lot of that could have been mitigated had she just been black, which like isn't her fault, but like, you know, as like a mother, like you do a lot of the heavy lifting, so it's like if you don't look like your kids, I don't know. But then also same for my dad, it's not like he knows any part of the mixed experience. So
these are always questions I have, but I just don't want to just be another black person who might be just triggering. Like,
no, because honestly, black people, like, you're the first person that ever asked me about like my experience. So I was like, yeah, like these questions are so cool. Like I've never like spent time thinking about it, because I think like definitely after like my identity crisis and then like making the shift to be like I'm black and like I'm proud of that, like I've kind of forgotten about like my mixed identity. I think it's still like apparent like in some days where it's like there might be, for example, like a day, like even like right now, like wearing like my 2 braids, like I might look like less black than I did like if I had my hair out, and like I might become more aware of that if there's like fewer black people like smiling at me, like, and I'm walking down the street, you know what I mean, where I'm just kind of like, damn, like I'm really not one of y'all today, huh? But like tomorrow when I have wash and go, like I'm gonna see y'all again, and like, you know, so I think like in that case it's like I'm, oh shit, like I'm aware. But it's fine. Like, it's not the end of the world.
Okay.
We're all gonna be fine.
It's like, as long as, like, we're getting to this point where it's not the end of the world, I feel better. Because, like, what my, I think, toxic trait is just always trying to kind of, like, fix something. I'm like, oh no, I keep hearing this story. How do we make sure people feel better? And
that's so sweet.
I don't know why I keep doing this, and I think eventually I'll explore, like, who's really having conversations around the Latinx identity, because I don't feel like they're really doing it. So it's just me kind of like, okay, like, do you guys even like the word Latinx? Like, what is going on? Like, who is not, you don't need one person as the figure for it, but who's helping guide the conversation publicly?
Yeah. One of my professors from freshman year, like, I wrote this essay about being mixed, because that's when I was having my crisis. And she just emailed me yesterday and said, like, oh, like, I have a student in my class who has the same issue, like, and she wants to, like, interview you and, like, talk to you about,
that's perfect.
Like, yeah. So it's, like, obviously, like, the issue is still there. And, like, I have to giggle because, like, I was in OGC, like, a couple weeks ago, and, a bunch of these, like, freshmen, sophomores, I don't even know, they were talking about, like, the 3/5 compromise and just kind of, like, poking fun. Like, they were black. They were just, like, how black people just, like, laugh and, like, I think it's a coping mechanism, just, like, laugh about all this shit. Like, 3/5 of a human, like, fuck you. Oh my God. But then, like, there was this mixed boy, like, sitting there. He's half white, half black. And this one, like, this one black girl was like, oh, like, haha, like, since we're 100% black and we're 3/5 of a person, like, you being half black makes you, like, more of a person.
Yes, like, that fraction would be weird.
Exactly. And so she literally took the time to calculate, like, the fraction of, like, what percent of a person he would have been in those times. And, like,
did it come out to, like, 3/4? I feel like it would be, like, 75%.
I'm not actually sure. It was some number. She could have done the math wrong, too. I don't know. But, like, he was really upset, though. Like, he actually, like, stopped talking, like, he left. Like, he walked away, and he was so mad at her. But, like, for me, I thought that shit was hilarious, because it's just like, why are you offended? Like, that's just
like,
the truth.
Would you have been offended your freshman year? Because that's the thing.
Probably. If someone, like, pointed me out in a group of, like 10 black people, and we're just like, haha, but, like, you, Isabella, then I probably would have been kind of like, oh, damn. Like,
because that's one of the things I feel like for certain black American communities, like, being harsh, especially with humor, is just what you do. Like, and I've had to learn to just stop making jokes because, like, I will say a joke and I would think it's funny. And of course, I might be like, you probably would not feel like, is you like, Tiana, you just said my sweater was ugly, you used to have a poor eating habit, but it was, I said it to be funny.
Right.
Like, and it's just like the fact that you didn't get it is kind of like a bummer. And now you're like, I'm a bully. I'm not a bully. So it's just, I don't know. I think that's one of the things that when you do come into black spaces, and there's so many different types of black people, but when you're closer to the north, I think, I don't know, people from the north have, like, a harsher humor than people from the south.
For sure.
Especially we don't have southern hospitality, so everything is just mean.
Everything is mean. Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel like that's even hard to grasp.
No, for real. And I had to explain to that girl, like, that I thought it was funny and that, like, I'm not offended. I was, like, a half Negro. Like, I was like, I don't care. Like, that's fine. Like, because she kind of started to feel bad, and I was just like, it's fine, like, if everyone will take it differently, like, maybe you could still apologize to him, but, like, at the end of the day, it's usually just the truth. Yeah. And I guess, like, then again, like, in those times, like, there's a 1-drop rule, so he still would have been, like, 3/5 of a person, but it's just the premise is, like, funny. Like,
say thanks for answering my question.
Yeah.
This was good. It was good.
No, I feel like I learned a lot, too.
Yeah, now I'm excited to, like, edit. So this is editing me, trying to wrap it up. Thank you so much for listening. If you made it this far, thank you so much, Isabella. I feel like we had a really great conversation, and I feel like we tackled everything seamlessly. We were able to laugh. I like editing back stuff where I'm actually laughing and having a good time. So I hope you all do too. And yeah, maybe, if you all like my guests, I can probably bring them back, but in a group setting with other people and see how that goes. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. and I will see you next week.